Hey everyone, so this is my presentation on a high versus low carbohydrate diet and the effect they have on athletic performance. To review a little bit of the guest presentation, the first argument presented was that a high carb intake is not necessary for athletes. Having a low carb diet can actually make carbohydrates an optional nutrient. The reasoning for this is that the high carbohydrate intake leads to obesity or diabetes, while the low carb diet can help athletes work harder and recover faster. Also, a low carb diet, one that reduces carbohydrates, can improve insulin sensitivity, which helps to reduce type 2 diabetes. That being said, carbohydrate intake needs to be individualized to have an optimal effect. Humans did not evolve to store very many carbohydrates. Depending on body fat levels, there are 20 times more calories in the fat store compared to carbohydrates. Fat is stored very efficiently without water, but 1 gram of glycogen takes about 2 to 3 grams of water to store, and that makes it heavier. So, a low carb diet allows the body to adapt to using the fat more efficiently. So, what is low carb? One definition is based on a person's tolerance to carbohydrates. It's the carbohydrate level where signs of carbohydrate intolerance go away. Or it is the level when the body switches from burning carbohydrates primarily to burning fats and ketones for fuel. All of this, however, varies from person to person, so diet has to be individualized. So, what is that in terms of numbers? Low carb numbers can generally be anywhere from 0 all the way to 150 grams, but it has been debated if the 200-gram mark can fit into being considered low carb. The low carbohydrate ketogenic diets are about 20 to 50 grams per day. It's recommended that recreational athletes consume 3 to 5 grams per kilogram body weight per day, and that's about 2 grams per pound of body weight, maybe a little more. Athletes in moderate activity, so non-endurance, need 5 to 8 grams per kilogram of body weight, or 2 to 3 grams per pound of body weight. And in ultra-endurance athletes, that intake is about 8 to 10 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. One example given was a study by Steve Finney, where high-level cyclists exercising at about 65% of their VO2 max had athletes normally on a high-carbohydrate diet adapt to a low-carbohydrate diet, and then tested their performance and their metabolism. We learned that removal of carbohydrates from the cyclist's diet did not negatively affect their performance. There was a dramatic shift in the fuel that was used, but after adapting, the biopsies showed they were able to burn almost entirely fats as fuel, and the glycogen levels weren't totally depleted. In another study with resistance training, there was a greater percent reduction in body fat in low carb and resistance training. Low carbs are preferred for burning fat, and the resistance training helps to preserve lean tissue. Now, a big takeaway from this guest presentation was that the body is very versatile and able to adapt to changes in carbohydrates and do very well health-wise on different ranges of carbohydrates. The article I chose, entitled "The Effect of High versus Low Carbohydrate Diets on Distances Covered in Soccer," wanted to look at the distances covered in a soccer match after consuming either a high carb or low carb diet. In a game, elite soccer players have high demands on their body in terms of the distances they need to cover. The quality of the distance covered is so high because they're doing high intensity running and sprinting most of the time. In a game, we tend to see the fatigue hit toward the end. This fatigue is apparent as the high-intensity running instances decline from the first half to the second half. It's not completely clear what causes this fatigue, but the researchers state that the low muscle glycogen can be a main factor, as it can be metabolized aerobically and anaerobically. So as I said in the previous slide, this study wanted to see the high carbohydrate diet of 8 grams per kilogram of body weight compared with a low carbohydrate diet of 3 grams per kilogram of body weight. There were 22 professional soccer players forming 2 teams. They played 2 consecutive games separated by 1 week. The week after the championships with their other teams, the 11-day study began, and the subjects trained together throughout the study. Team A started with the high carbohydrate diet from Monday to Thursday before their first match. Team B started with the low carbohydrate diet for the same period of time. When the first match finished on Thursday night, the players could follow their own diet plans until Sunday night, and then the dietary intervention was reversed. So Team A got the low carb diet and Team B got the high carb diet for the second half of the study. This picture just shows how the study was designed. This training between the first day and the first match consisted of easy running, some sprints, stretching, and some soccer-specific training and drills. It was designed to be an easier program in order to reduce the chance of injury and to maintain the player's physical conditioning. As I said earlier, there were 22 subjects and they were of similar age, body type, and training experience, as you can see from the teams put side by side. The biggest difference would probably be years of experience, where Team B has about a year of experience more than Team A. So the amount of food eaten was based on the body mass of each individual. The table on the left shows the estimation for a 70-kilogram player, so 154 pounds, and the time of meals and snacks were only controlled on match day. On game day, in both high-carb and low-carb groups, they had 2 meals around 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock for breakfast and lunch. I should mention here that all the players followed this diet except the goalkeeper, who isn't required to cover as much distance during a game as the other players. There were also no dietary supplements, alcohol, or tobacco allowed during the study period, and they could drink as much water as they wanted. The researchers measured the players' distance covered and running speeds with the GPS watch, because it could give pretty reliable measurements over the longer distances and faster speeds. It wasn't as reliable for the short distances and for the very quick movements, but they could wear the GPS watch without restricting their movement. The watch also took heart rate every 10 minutes during the match. So when the referee said so, the players would start their GPS watches to start recording the time, distances, and heart rate. At the end of the half, the players stopped their recordings at the referee's signal, and there were no substitutions, so the watch was on and running the entire half. So Team A won the first match with a score of 3-1, and then Team B won the second with a score of 1-2. The team with the high carbohydrate treatment won both times. And this picture shows the distance covered with the high carbohydrate and the low carbohydrate comparison, just so you can see that the high carbohydrate players were covering more distance in the 2 matches. Also, the distances covered from walking to jogging to sprinting were higher in the high carbohydrate group than with the low carbohydrate group. As shown in this table on heart rate responses, you can see that the mean heart rate in the high carbohydrate group was higher than the low carbohydrate group's mean heart rate. So, to recap, all 20 players, excluding the two goalkeepers, covered a greater distance on the high carbohydrate diet. Although there was success with the high carbohydrate diet, the researchers said that the diet shouldn't be followed for every soccer game because it may have detrimental effects on metabolism for active individuals. As we talked about a little bit in the review, higher carbohydrate intake could lead to increased body weight, body fat, and incidences of diabetes. The high carb diet is helpful in maintaining that high intensity exercise. And finally, the researchers recommended that the higher carbohydrate diet should be used only for the very important games in the season. So thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation. Here is the article if you want to read it on your own. So yeah, have a great weekend, everyone.